doubt a few will join as we go. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for the launch of the new report from the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Population Development and Reproductive Health, 12 Years of Quality Education, How Investing in SRHR Helps Keep Girls in School. So I'm Baroness Liz Sugg. I'm co-chair of the APPG, which is one of the oldest APPGs in the UK Parliament, and we've been in existence since 1979. I've got a few thank yous to start with. I really wanted to thank all of the organisations that submitted such excellent written evidence and experts that gave oral evidence in the hearings. I know many of you are in attendance today, so thank you so much. And I wanted to thank our panel members, Harriet Baldwin, Janet Craig-Owen, Anne Jenkin, Pauline Latham, Yasmin Qureshi, Virendra Sharma, and Tommy Shepherd. I'd like to thank Carol Bradford for drafting the report and Pip Burrows for the layout and design, and to our brilliant and hardworking APPG staff, Meta Kirby and Mafanwe Probin, for coordinating and overseeing everything. And finally, thank you to the European Parliamentary Forum on Sexual and Reproductive Rights, who've helped us organise this launch alongside UNFPA, IPPF, MSI and Plan International. We're recording this launch and it'll be available to watch afterwards on the APPG website and on YouTube. And I'm really pleased that we're launching this new report just ahead of the G7 summit this weekend, where all of the G7 nations will be agreeing a global plan to help 40 million more girls into education. And also ahead of the Global Education Summit in London in July, a really big year for education in the UK this year. And this is my first report as the new co-chair for the APPG, but it's on an issue that's really close to my heart as a former minister at DFID and the FCDO and the first UK Special Envoy for Girls' Education. And we know that the UK government has a really firm commitment to 12 years of quality education, and that's with really good reasons. As our report highlights, if a girl completes her education, their lifetime earnings dramatically increase, national growth rates rise, child marriage rates decline, child mortality rates fall, and child stunting drops. And we know that these benefits will be felt for generations to come. So we're all clear, I think, and all in agreement that educating girls will change the world for the better. And this report looks at how sexual and reproductive health and rights are really closely linked to education. And the report makes recommendations to the UK government, to the UK and other programme delivery partners, parliamentarians and national governments. And it's really clear from the report and from the evidence we've seen that education and SRHR form a virtuous circle, as we've called it. We know that education helps adolescent girls to delay pregnancy, and while avoiding pregnancy and child marriage itself helps girls complete their formal education. And while simply investing in just education alone will of course improve SRH outcomes eventually, doing that alone will not make progress quick enough, and we will fail too many girls. We know that unwanted pregnancy is one of the most serious disruptors of girls' education, and comprehensive sexuality education and access to SRH services is vitally important to keep girls in school for longer. And I know that many of us here in the UK really take for granted our good fortune in benefiting from decades of transformative and open education about sexual health, menstruation, and our reproductive rights. And the standards that we have here in the UK of sexuality education, contraceptive supply and safe abortion is a privilege that sadly is not shared by many of our sisters and our mothers and our daughters around the world. And the impact that this has on the ability of a girl to be educated and live a happy and fulfilling life is incredibly profound. So in order to reach our goals in education, we need to see a shift change in investment in sexual and reproductive health and rights from donor governments, from multilateral institutions and from national governments. This report was written as the reductions of UK aid as the details were starting to emerge, and we have been deeply disappointed at the scale of cuts to life-saving SRHR programmes. Here at the APPG, we would like to see an immediate return to the UK government spending 0.7% of GNI on international development. And we'd also like to see a clear strategy for long-term investment in SRHR, with a particular focus on adolescent girls as part of the upcoming International Development Review. In order to achieve the ambitions of 12 years of quality education for every girl in the world, the report urges donors and their programme delivery partners to commit to long-term predictable investment, taking a multi-pronged approach to reach girls both in school and out of school, and that includes the provision of adolescent reproductive health services and comprehensive sexuality education. National governments need to invest in high quality, rights-based CSE for children and adolescents, both in and out of school. We need them to involve religious leaders and parents and teachers and repeal policies and practices that result in the exclusion or expulsion of girls from schools for reasons of pregnancy, marital status, or sexual activity. And national ministries need to work together on sound and well-coordinated policies that support programs that make communities aware of the risks and impact of child marriage, adolescents' pregnancies, to support attitudinal and behavioural change. And it's really important that governments prioritise the poorest and the most marginalised of adolescents for CSE and SRH services, both in and out of school. And let us all ensure that the best practices for programme delivery really includes disseminating messages to adolescents in new and innovative ways. Of course, we've seen some of that in the COVID response, and making sure that education is delivered in dignified and safe settings with good sanitary facilities. And we all know that resources are limited, both for donor governments and for partner governments, and particularly at the moment as we deal with the impacts of COVID-19 and the secondary economic impacts of COVID-19 for many years to come. So acknowledging that difficulty, I think we all need to make sure that we work together to make sure that interventions are impacting the most vulnerable. And that's particularly important when resources are limited. But that's enough from me. We've got a great lineup of the speakers today. We have a bit of time for questions at the end. And if there's any comments or any points you'd like to make, the chat function is open. So please feel free to go ahead with that. But our first speaker is SRHR, who was an expert witness in our hearings. And we were also inspired by her. We invited her to the launch. And Essie has worked and volunteered on many initiatives, all focused on improving the lives and educational outcomes of young girls through SRHR. And she's also the advocacy and focal person for Marie Stopes Ghana. So, Essie, over to you.
Thank you, Baroness. Hello, everyone. I bring you greetings from Ghana. I grew up in a community in the western region of Ghana where teenage pregnancy was frankly normalized. Growing up, hardly would you have seen your big sisters or seniors making up to higher education. If I think about it, I'm not sure I knew of anyone growing up that's advanced to the university. And so if you ask me why I'm here today, speaking to you on this call and not at home with about 2 or 3 kids or even a grandmother by now, I will tell you I have no idea. I just got lucky, and the futures of girls should not be left to luck. Where I come from, we had no information about our reproductive health, neither in school or at home. It took me going to the university to read the program that I studied to first hear of contraception and even safe abortion. It was for the first time for me as a first-year undergraduate student, because where I come from, when you think about safe abortion itself, you're thinking illegal or a quack doctor. You wouldn't think abortion and a health facility. And so hearing that there were actually health facilities, even including government facilities, that render safe abortion and contraceptive services for girls. As an 18-year-old fresh-year undergraduate student, who at the time had no in-depth understanding or limited understanding of the complex dynamics of reproductive health and population development, even then, I could not help but wonder, what if girls in my community had the information I was receiving now? Would I be the only one from my community in this university? If I look back at my own family, thinking about my big sister, if they had this information, would I be the only one from my family receiving higher education, even though I was the last child? And so then, with this information I had received, thinking I had gotten some superpower, even there and then, I went back home. I engaged the heads of schools and the junior high schools in my community to establish girl-child clubs to deliver reproductive health education at the time, with the thinking primarily to use that as a tool to advance higher education for girls. Teenage pregnancy continued to be one of the major barriers to higher education for girls in sub-Saharan Africa. every year, about 4 million adolescent girls drop out of schools in sub-Saharan Africa due to teenage pregnancy alone. In Niger, 1 in 2 girls will get pregnant before their 18th birthday, while only 1 in 100 will complete secondary education. And the situation is not so different for Ghana, like I said in my earlier story. In the 2018-2019 academic year alone, Ghana recorded about 7,293 pregnancies in schools alone, from upper primary to secondary education. And the COVID-19 pandemic is worsening the situation. Recent data from the Ghana Health Service indicates that in 2020 alone, Ghana recorded about 2,865 pregnancies among younger adolescents 10 to 14 years, and over 107,000 pregnancies in girls 15 to 19 years. If you would ask me, and nobody is asking, but I have this platform, so I will say it. I believe that no government, no donor agency, no institution seeking to advance higher education and even gender equality for girls will be doing a good job if they do not recognize the crucial role that reproductive health has to play. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Essie, and thank you for sharing your story and being really clear about the power of information. I completely agree with you, and thank you for being so clear in your belief about the importance of donor governments and national governments, and indeed everyone really focusing on the importance of reproductive health. And thank you for all you do as an MSI advocacy and focal person, and all the work you do with women and girls in your community. Please carry on. Our next speaker is Petra, the President of the European Parliamentary Forum on Sexual and Reproductive Rights, and a member of the Austrian National Council and SBO spokesperson for global development. And really pleased that Petra is able to join us today. Over to you, Petra.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for organizing this webinar, for inviting me to address you. I want to start with saying that UK is a model for many other countries with your 0.7% ODA law, and I very much hope that it will not become victim of any austerity measures after the pandemic. So we really should fight for that as well. So congratulations, Baroness Sack, for this insightful, inspiring, and much needed report. As the report rightly puts it, linkages between SRHR, girls' education, and the demographic dividend are too often unknown. It is a kind of vicious circle between SRHR and girls' education, as education helps adolescent girls to delay pregnancy and avoid child marriage especially, while avoiding pregnancy and child marriage itself helps girls to complete their formal education. In November 2019, at the ICPT +25 summit in Nairobi, the international community took a strong commitment, including ambitious funding ones, to fulfill the unfinished business of the ICTP program of action. In particular, we all committed to achieve universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights as a part of universal health coverage, to address sexual and gender-based violence and harmful practices, to mobilize the required financing to finish the ICPT program of action and sustain the gains already made, and invest in the education of adolescent and youth, and especially of girls, of course. At the time when the international community is about to reconvene and renew policy and funding commitments at the Generation Equality Forum later this month and at the beginning of July, it is crucial that we deliver on these promises and especially work to improve access to SRHR. This includes fulfilling needs for family planning services and for access to comprehensive sex education in schools and outside, as we just heard. That is key to empower girls and boys about their rights, their choices, and their opportunities. As parliamentarians, we have a key role to make these commitments a reality. We must, of course, work more than ever do improve our national laws on SRHR, including access to comprehensive sexuality education. But beyond, we have a responsibility to ensure that our governments improve the funding environment for SRHR and girls' education abroad, and make this funding a priority of their development cooperation policy. And if not, we will fail those millions of girls who are still left behind, which is not in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, and are kept out of school, and who are really counting on us. So thank you very much for your commitment. And I'm sure you know EPF stands by you, and whenever you need any advice or help, please contact us and we would be happy to assist you. And I wish the webinar much success, and I hope you spread out over the whole Parliament in London with your message.
Thank you, Petra. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for really reminding us what we still need to achieve from the ICPD perspective. And you know, all of us have to work together on this. And I know EPF do a fantastic job for parliaments all around Europe to help spread this message. And please be assured we're doing all we can here in the UK as the APPG to carry on. I'm delighted to welcome next our keynote speaker, and that's Helen Grant, MP, who was appointed in January 2021 as the Prime Minister's Special Envoy on Girls' Education. Now, I was really sad to leave this role, I have to admit, but I'm delighted to see Helen in this position, as I know her passion for girls' education, and it has been really great to see her so active in her role. So really looking forward to what she's got to say. Over to you, Helen.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Liz. Thank you for inviting me to be with you today. And it really is lovely to see some old friends again and be reacquainted. And of course, it's lovely to be working with you again too. As you know, we go back a fairly long way. But, you know, listening to girls and young women, particularly like Ezzy, who really is a superhero. She said she felt like a superhero, and my goodness, she is one. Is a critical part of the job that I do, and as you will know, politicians are pretty good at talking, but it's really important to listening to young girls and women about what they say they want from their leaders and others, and about their education. And from the numerous meetings that I've had with young girls and women all over the world, and in particular in West Africa recently, it is very obvious to me that you cannot talk about girls' education without talking about sexual and reproductive health and rights. And we know that period poverty, unintended pregnancies, lack of SRHR services all lead to girls missing school, dropping out completely, and sometimes never again returning to education. So I really am delighted to be with you today at the launch of this really important report. And I want to thank you, Liz, and the APPG group and all involved with the production of the report for the excellent and very committed work that you do, and it's work that I know that you do day in, day out. So building on the fantastic work that you did, Liz, and I said at the beginning of this, I really did have big boots to fill, and I still do have big boots to fill. But I'm very honoured to be the Prime Minister's second special envoy for girls' education. And my role is very much about championing his message that providing 12 years of quality education for every girl on the planet is one of the best ways of tackling many of the big issues facing the world today, like poverty, climate change, and inequality. We know that investing in girls' education is an absolute game changer. A child of a mother who can read is 50% more likely to live beyond the age of 5, twice as likely to attend school themselves, and 50% more likely to be immunised. So education for girls is vital for them, but it's also really important in levelling up society, boosting incomes, and developing economies and nations. Even before COVID-19, sadly, the world was facing a learning crisis. Tragically, the pandemic has become one of the biggest educational disruptors in our history, affecting something in the region of 1.6 billion children at the peak of the pandemic in 2020. Many of these children are girls. Many of them will never return to school. Many of them will never even start school, lowering their chances of future employment and having decent livelihoods. We know too that out-of-school girls are at greater risk of violence, sexual abuse, early marriage, forced marriage, FGM, human trafficking, and the list goes on. All of this creating a very, very real risk of a lost generation of girls. And we need to work really hard, and we need to work together to make sure that this does not happen. For the UK, this has begun with leadership from the very top. Our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has put championing 12 years of quality education at the heart of the G7 presidency. This will allow the transformative power of girls' education to get the priority and profile that it really needs and deserves, as well as those much needed financial and political commitments. Our Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, together with G7 foreign and development ministers, has also agreed global targets, which include, as Liz mentioned at the beginning, getting 20 million more girls reading by the age of 10 and 40 million more girls in primary and secondary school in low to middle income countries by 2026. G7 members also agreed to use our shared expertise across health, WASH, nutrition and social protection to address many of the barriers that adolescent girls face. This year too, it's nearly upon us, we will be co-hosting with Kenya the Financing Summit for the Global Partnership for Education. It's going to be on the 28th and 29th of July in London. And we're working with our international partners to ensure that we get the replenishment commitments needed for girls' education for the next 5 years. We know too that education interventions must provide for more than just learning, and this is something that comes out very strongly in the findings section of the APPG report. And the UK will continue to be a gender equality leader, tackling the issues that prevent girls from getting to school and from staying in school. No girl should have her hopes and dreams dashed because she's had to marry too early or become a mother due to lack of family planning advice. And I was able to see for myself some of the fantastic educational programs that we've been running over the last few years when I was in Ghana and Sierra Leone just a few weeks ago. These impressive programs focus not just on improving learning, but there are specific measures within them to address violence in school and out of school, pregnancy, period poverty, and other safeguarding issues. I was especially impressed by the determination of the Minister for Education in Sierra Leone, Dr. David Senge, and I know you know him as well, Liz, and he really is a driver, and he's bringing about considerable change in pushing through the government's new radical inclusion policy. This policy seeks to ensure, among other things, the rights of girls to return to school should they fall pregnant. And sadly, there are many countries still around the world where if a girl falls pregnant, it means that she leaves school and usually that she doesn't return. And we are urging countries, as many as possible, to change these restrictive policies and legislation that allows this currently to happen. I was also able to see what our teams were doing in Uganda and Nigeria and how they'd been able to adapt to COVID school closures. They were able to keep children learning, notwithstanding the difficulties, through home and community-based learning. The recording of radio and TV lessons and accelerated learning programs to help children who had missed out on school catch up. I know the weight of the challenge with girls' education is very, very significant, but our ability to make change in the world, if we work together, should never, ever be underestimated. And I'm hopeful that the Global Education Summit in July and other events like the Generation Equality Forum will provide real opportunities for collaboration and contribution. But to really move the dial on as well, the international community need to be even more ambitious and coordinated in their approach to girls' education. We all need to raise the bar. We all need to rally behind these global targets. And we all need to build on the momentum that's being created from the G7 with the various declarations, the communications and the communiques and the pledges. And I'm hopeful that some really interesting ones will come out of the Leaders' Summit tomorrow. But we need to build this momentum, take it into the Global Education Summit. And after that, continue that momentum into a real global movement. There needs to be more focus too on quality and secondary education for our girls. And as I said at the very beginning, we need to listen much more carefully to our girls and women about what they say they want and need. It's all very well for us to put in place what we think they want, but they're at the coalface, they're going through it, so we must listen. And that might include safer roads for safer walking to school, free sanitary products to help with confidence and school attendance, or separate toilets for privacy, and more access to SRHR programs. And last, but certainly not least, and it's a big responsibility, but it's critical, it's really important. Our global leaders need to speak out much more, as our Prime Minister has done, on the importance of educating girls, explaining all of the advantages for girls and women, their children, their families, their communities, and their nations. And you know, together, if we can make this happen, and I really believe we can, the human race will be in a much, much better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen, and I agree with every word you just said. So thank you so much. It's really clear that you understand the importance of education, but also that interlinkage with SRHR as well. And we're lucky to have you as a champion for girls' education. You're looking forward to seeing, we're really pleased the action plan on girls' education was published recently, and looking forward to, as you say, some positive announcements from the G7, and also looking ahead to the GPE summit in July. And the International Development Review as well. Really hope that we can see some really strong commitments there on SRHR and girls' education as well. Thank you very much. Our last speaker before we go to the Q&A is Daniela Maineses-Liai. And I hope I've got that pronunciation right, correct me if I haven't. And Daniela is a medical doctor from Ecuador, an SRHR activist and a representative from Transform Education. Over to you, Daniela.
Thank you so much, Baroness, and hello, everyone. Well, as they said, I'm from Ecuador, which is one of the countries from South America that has the highest adolescent pregnancy rates. So I want you to all imagine for a minute that you have never listened to the word sex, that no one ever taught you how to properly call the different parts of your body, that no one ever taught you what consent is. Can you imagine that this is a reality for many girls around the globe? This is actually one of the things that impacted me the most. I work right now in urban areas from the country, but I also work with communities and with girls from communities. I do some research, and we do different programs to try to teach them comprehensive sexuality education. We were astonished by the fact that many of them have never heard the word sex. we also were astonished by the fact that most women around my country, they idealize motherhood in a way that it's their only goal in their life. They're not aspiring to get any more education because they are aspiring to become moms. And I'm telling you this about girls from 10 years old to 12 years old. So this education needs to be shifted. We cannot continue to not support programs. Governments need to be held accountable for not putting much invest in girls' education. The thing is, most girls don't even learn certain things at school. They have shifted the way of finding some information through digital spaces, which is one of the things that also the pandemic has been supporting, I can say. But also in schools, we don't have any programs that teaches young girls how to protect themselves, how to properly own their bodily autonomy, and how to build proper and comprehensive sexuality education. Truth is, these girls need our support. We need long-term invest from governments. It's hard being an activist at this time because all the focus has been shifted to COVID-19. But let's not forget that we need to support girls, especially young women. I was telling you that my country has one of the highest rates of adolescent pregnancy. And one statistic is that girls among 10 to 14 years held like 12% of these girls have had at least one pregnancy. We have high abortion rates as well that have been pretty much undiminished. They are not really facts because we cannot consider those statistics because abortion here was penalized until a few months ago. So the future of girls is in our hands, really. We need the support, not only from our personal government, but from governments internationally. So I think that launches like this one really bring the action and the focus on these important and crucial things. We have statistics now. We need to improve the quality of girls' education, and never forget that comprehensive sexuality education should be part of every school's program. So I want to thank you to governments that contribute to this, to the international cooperation, and to make once again the call that we shouldn't be left behind. No country should be left behind. And also the young people, we need to raise our voices to be heard and to demand for the information that we need and the education that we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniela. And I think you really set out well there the scale of the problem and the importance of not leaving any girl or any country behind. We're obviously really pleased to see that progress on safe abortion that you mentioned. And I know that there's more to do on that. And you also mentioned that it's tough being an activist, and I really acknowledge that. You know, it's tough being an activist anyway, let alone in a time like this, let alone in the midst of a pandemic when the kind of natural focus is on other things from governments and other people, which is why I think it's so important that you continue to speak up and that you know the people like me and Helen and others listen to women and girls around the world to understand what you need in order to make the improvements we all want to see. Did you have a question for Helen Grant that you wanted to ask her?
I did. Should I do it right now?
Oh, you just come back on mute, Daniela.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Helen, I realized that you said a lot about the collaboration and the contribution, and you talked also about the Generation Equality Forum that it's going to happen soon. So I wanted to ask you, to what extent is the UK supporting young people in high-level decision-making spaces to be listened, but also for their input to be acted on, especially in spaces related to SRHR and like the upcoming Generation Equality Forum that I was saying?
Well, can you hear me okay? And many congratulations on your speech. I thought you spoke beautifully and really pertinently as well. And you know, you're doing it. This is an opportunity. Liz Sugg, our Baroness, through inviting you to address the APPG, your voice, you know, is capable of going all over the world as a young woman on these matters. This is a wonderful, the UK Parliament is a wonderful forum, a wonderful setting to be able to speak on such pressing issues. So that's the first example. I do think that there are a lot of good things happening in this space today. As many of you will know, and hopefully you will know, Daniela, the UK secured a standalone G7 girls education declaration, which was a good success. And actually in the declaration, it states that members plan to work in collaboration, and it's there's that word again, with girl-led groups and youth leaders, just like you. And so they should, so we should. So there's an opportunity. I think as well in the Girls Education Action Plan that Liz worked very hard on when she was at FCDO. It does say that as the Prime Minister's Special Envoy, I will engage with youth activists, and you know that's written in black and white. That is something that is clearly set out that I should do. But you've also heard how I completely get the fact that I know I can't do my job properly if I don't listen to you and others about what's really happening. You know, sadly, I was a young girl long ago, but I'm not a young girl now, but I care about young girls and I want to serve them, and they have to have a voice. You know what's happening. You are the agents for change. You can bring it all about. You have the ideas, particularly on many critical issues like climate change that will impact on you even more than me. So we must listen to you. We really must. There's opportunities as well, which, as you've mentioned, will certainly come out of the Generation Equality Forum as well, and the Y7 element of the G7. I'm going to be doing a session with a group of primary school children in Cornwall tomorrow, who will be handing me their own declaration. So again, all of these opportunities are there to be taken, and it's absolutely right that we create a space, a major platform for you to be able to speak and to actually hold us to account. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I'm just having a look in the chat here, and we've got a few comments from people from Florence saying, from Population Matters, saying that she looks at all these linkages, plus the environment, of course, which we haven't mentioned. And we all know that it's really important that we invest properly in education, and that's going to have benefits to the environment too. And looking ahead to later this year, the UK is hosting COP26. So I think really key that we get SRHR and girls' education on the agenda there. And Florence also says that she feels those superpowers, having completed higher education up to master's level, and it's really enlightening. But sadly, most girls and boys don't finish school, and of course, we need a lot of work, and we mustn't let it be a gamble. There's a question here from Maya to Essie, and she's asking, she'd love to hear more about how you learned about SRHR and safe abortion as a first-year undergrad, and do you think there's a role for some trickle-down mechanisms from that in the higher education context? If you would like to answer that, Essie.
All right, thank you. So I studied population and health at the undergraduate level. So we had, of course, aspects of reproductive health and adolescent reproductive health in that regard. But no, there is no, even at the university level, there is no structured system to ensure all other students receive information on reproductive health. I remember there is a core subject that advances access to HIV and AIDS education, but that is just it. As an undergraduate, I think one of the researches I did for an assignment on campus, trying to find out university students' facility preferences. It wasn't really an assignment to find out knowledge on SRHR, But in that research work, I realized that most of the university students there did not even know about contraception or even Ghana's state or Ghana's abortion law. So you realize that even at the university level, unless the person is studying a health program or medicine, they would graduate, occupy certain positions in the country and wouldn't have comprehensive information about their reproductive health. So yeah, hope that answers.
Thanks, Essie. No, that's a fantastic answer. I think we've got Aoife from Plan, who hopefully might be able to ask the question herself if we're able to do that technology-wise. Aoife, do you want to have a go, and we'll see if we can hear you?
Hello there. Thank you to all the panelists for today's panel. It's been a real pleasure to be involved in it. So the question in particular to Helen. We've seen in the report launched today and in global evidence that comprehensive sexuality education is a critical part of supporting girls to stay in school learning, as well as being critical to a girl's rights to decide about her body, life, and future. So in your role as the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Girls' Education, would you commit to being a CSE champion and ensure that SRHR is integrated throughout the UK girls' education work and beyond?
I think it's a great question, and I think comprehensive sexuality education is critical for empowering adolescents with the knowledge and skills they need to make informed decisions about their bodies and their lives and their choices. I think it's a key component of good education, and I think it's essential too in realising gender equality and challenging very harmful norms. And to be quite straight and blunt with your question, would I consider being a champion? Absolutely yes, I would be honoured to be a champion for high quality rights-based CSE.
Great, thank you very much, Ellen. There's a question here for Daniela. Maya says, thank you for your insights from Ecuador. If motherhood is such a major goal for young girls, possibly SRHR education could be about safe sex as well as safe motherhood. What's your response to that?
Okay, thank you, Maya, for that question. The thing is that this idealization of motherhood comes from gender inequality background. Girls don't have as many opportunities as men do in my country, well, and in many others as well, I think. But the thing is that they idealize this motherhood thing because they think that is the way they can accomplish a goal in society. They see it as a way of escaping and being able to leave their homes. So I think the main area of focus should be that, like giving girls another opportunities, having more chances to follow their dreams or pursue another goal. That's one thing, and like not the idealization that you're only here for being a mother, which is something that in communities here, especially in indigenous communities, it's like that is your role in society. So it's a little bit a cultural thing here, but that I think that is the area where we need to focus, and also giving them like SRHR how to properly, like if they want to start early their sexuality, their sexual life, their first sexual encounter here, it's among 10 to 13 years, which is very soon. So how to do it properly and to take care of themselves and how to prevent unwanted pregnancies. But also like we need to work in these two areas at the same time with different cultural background and people that support that, like community leaders and religious people from the communities as well. I hope I answered your question correctly.
Great, thank you so much, Daniela. And I'm afraid we're actually out of time. There's lots of still questions and comments in the chat box, so we will do our best to get back to those people we haven't been able to be able to respond to today. But you know, I think really important that we keep this conversation going. The APPG are going to use the report and its recommendations to help our advocacy in Parliament and globally as well. And it's great to hear from FCDO that they'll be looking carefully at those recommendations too. As I said, it's a really big year for girls' education, a big year for the UK hosting lots of summits. And here in the APPG, we'll be doing all we can to make sure that SRHR remains high on the agenda. Thank you so much to all the speakers and participants, particularly to Helen and Essie and Daniela, and for everyone who's been able to come along and listen in today. You know, it's been really tough times for women and girls around the world, and indeed for activists, as I said, and also for many of you who work in this area in girls' education or SRHR. Because of COVID, because of aid cuts, and because of this kind of the pressure on governments in order to deal with the COVID response. But I think we all know that it's a cause worth continuing to fight for. So I want to end really by thanking all of you for all you do in this area, encouraging you to continue. You certainly will have me and my fellow members of the APPG continuing to make the case and to advocate for the importance of SRHR within girls' education and of course more broadly. So thank you so much all of you for attending today. Really appreciate your time and look forward to continuing the conversation.